What is the creepiest glitch in the matrix you've experienced? I mentioned this in another thread, but here it is again. Me and my friend were at a Chinese restaurant and we ordered a General Tso chicken dinner and shrimp lo mein dish. When we sat down, we took out both boxes and set them on the table about 2 feet apart. My friend opens the first box and we see a shrimp lo mein dish. It has all the things in there. Noodles, shrimp, fried rice. He closes the box and opens the other box. Inside that box is another shrimp lo mein dish. Shrimp, noodles, fried rice. Oh, I think. They must have mixed the order. I was just about to say this when my friend says out loud, looks like they made a mistake and gave us 2, as he opens up the first box again. Inside of it is a General Tso chicken dinner order. General Tso chicken, white rice, and an egg roll. He froze and looked at me. I looked back at him, and we sat in silence. It took us 5 or so minutes to collect ourselves. I have no idea what the frick happened. Not creepy, but so vivid and distinct that I still think about it years later. I had a, subjectively, long, involved dream where I was a vendor at a fish market. I remember getting up early, dressing, doing a whole morning routine, going to get tea, heading out to the docks, buying fish, loading them in a cart and going to get ice, then haggling for ice, buying some less fresh fish while I was at it, then going to a market to my stall, setting up and selling fish all day. It was so real. I talked to friends, smoked nasty cigarettes, haggled customers, ate lunch, had tea, and just lived through the day. At the end of the day, I cleaned up, counted my cash, paid the stall rent, went home, cooked some of the fish I hadn't sold, along with some veggies and rice that I traded for. I drank more tea, relaxed for a while, then drew a hot bath, soaked and smoked some more cigs, then went to bed. The next morning, I woke up refreshed, ready to go down to the docks to buy fresh catch. Except I was in my house, next to my wife, truck parked outside, and it was Saturday. No work. My wife and I were getting geared up to go skiing in Oregon and the car was already packed. Weird thing was, in the dream, I was single and a smoker. I'm not. And the whole long dream had been in fluent Chinese. The effortless kind of fluency that only comes from a lifetime of speaking it. Oh, and I had been Chinese. I'm a big, hairy white dude. Somewhat fluent in Spanish, and I know a little bit of Russian, but it was just weird. I've never worked in a fish market. I wonder who I was. I wonder what that was. I've experienced deja vu a couple of times when I was younger, and while that is certainly freaky, nothing beats the opposite. Jamais vu, which I experienced twice during a period of work-related stress a few years ago. On both occasions, I was driving in my car in perfectly familiar surroundings near my home, when suddenly I had no idea where I was or where I was going. It was like being instantly teleported to a foreign country. It only lasted seconds, but very creepy nonetheless. Until it happened to me, I had no idea that this even existed. Edit, for those of you concerned about my health. Yes, I did see a doctor, and so should you if something like this happens to you more than once or lasts longer than a few seconds. My episodes were stress-induced, but more serious conditions can also cause the symptom. Edit 2. If you're on drugs, well, there's your problem. Oh boy, you guys would love where I work. Weird things happen here all the time, but I'll just talk about one of the creepiest moments I've experienced here. I work as a security/nighttime attendant at an apartment building. It's 24 stories and one of the oldest buildings in the city. One night I'm sitting here when the phone rings at about 3 a.m. and I answer, "Hello, this is Draven at the front desk. How can I help you?" The voice on the other end sounded female but was totally garbled and the only bit I could make out was 23rd floor. I tried to tell the person I couldn't understand them and asked what apartment they were in, but again, garbled response and 23rd floor. After the third time of trying to understand them and getting the same response, I said since I couldn't understand them, I'd have them come up to meet me in the hallway. So I go to the main elevators, and both are up on the, surprise, 23rd floor. Luckily, we have an older service elevator, and it's only on the 7th floor, so I call it down. I get it and hit the button for the 23rd floor, but it won't move and the inner door won't close, so I go to unlock the reset panel and boom, we start going up. Door still open. I'm freaking out, and the elevator is shaking because it goes pretty fast and it's old. As I'm going up, I just stay towards the back and finally I reach floor 23. I step out, door closes just fine, and I look around the hallway. There's nobody around. I walk along slowly trying to listen for anyone awake who might have called, but there's nothing. So now I head the opposite direction and go towards where the regular elevators are, and when I get to them, they're just sitting there with their doors open. I was pretty freaked out, but I knew it could just be the elevators on the fritz, so I get in and figure I'll just reset them when I get to floor 1, when I hear the sound of the back stairwell closing. So I quickly get out and go to the stairwell, and lo and behold, no one's there, but the maintenance door to the machine room is ajar, and at that time, I'm the only one in the building with the key. At the top of the building is a large machine room housing all the really, really loud machinery that does stuff in the building and allows access to the roof. I don't like going into it because it's creepy as heck, and no one ever goes in there. So at this point, I'm seriously freaked out, but I muster up and head in. I shout, "Hello?" And there's no response. The lights in this room flicker because they're crappy fluorescent, so I can't see well either. But at the end of the room, I can make out the roof access door, and sure as heck, it's slightly open. So I slowly continue forward, checking the space in between each machine as I walk by. And there's no one there, so I open the roof access door. I can't see anyone ahead of me on the roof, but there is a slight wraparound, and if there was a jumper or something, I needed to be sure, so I step out and leave the door ajar just like it was. Almost immediately, the door is pulled shut. Now, I might have written it off as wind or something, but this door is hard to shut and hard to open. Really hard. I immediately grab the handle and yank it open, slam it behind me, and run straight for the maintenance door. It automatically locks when it's closed, so I slam it shut too and go back to the 23rd floor hallway, get into an elevator, door still open, and go all the way down to the first floor. I go back to the main lobby, and as soon as I sit down, the phone rings. I pick it up, don't say a word, and sure as heck, garbled voice again, only audibly saying 23rd floor. I hung up the phone, turned the ringer off, and spent the rest of the evening just staring at the parking garage security monitor. There's been a bunch of creepy things happen at this building. It's basically like the Overlook Hotel at night. I walked past a dark room here on the first floor once and swore I saw myself standing inside it. The next night, as I'm inside said room cleaning, the lights flip off and I turn around to see a quick flash of myself walking past. TLDR, creepy ghost or some crap played games with me at work by trying to lure me onto the roof of the building. I knew my uncle had died. My mom had called me and told me the news. It was very sad. She told me in the middle of work and I told one of my coworkers. He expressed his condolences on my loss. A couple weeks later, my sister mentioned my aunt and uncle doing something. I said, "But he's dead." And my sister said, "No, he wasn't." I called my mom. "No, he wasn't dead." To this day, I'm still not sure how much of it my brain imagined and how much of it was real. Did I really talk to my coworker? Was I even on the phone with my mom at all that day? It still freaks me out knowing that my mind could fabricate so complete and real a memory like that. This happened to my dad, so it's not exactly a personal story. Anyway, my dad was driving down a long, lonely highway in Ohio, doing about 90 in a Z28 with a radar detector. Rolling hills and whatnot meant that cops could hide at the bottom before you could see them and slow down. So, all of a sudden, his radar detector starts blaring and he slams on the brakes. Right over the hill, there's a squad car running radar. He's super relieved, but when he looks at the detector, it's not even on the windshield. It was unplugged and in the glove compartment. What the heck? TLDR, ghost radar detector kept my dad from getting a ticket. Posted this in a previous sub a while back, but I'll post it again as it fits here too. I had just turned 22 and my parents had sold their house and purchased a place out in the country. On the property, there was a big shed not far from the house that I decided to turn into my place. Now, I felt kind of uncomfortable in the shed, but sometimes my dog kept me company, so it wasn't so bad. Anyway, I had been in there maybe 2 weeks, and one night I'm on the computer, my dog asleep at my feet, and I need to pee, so I get up and go outside to pee. It's a beautiful, clear night, and the stars were incredible. Next thing I hear the shed door slam behind me. I turn immediately and try to open it, but it won't budge. Now from the inside the shed, I can hear my dog start to growl, quietly at first, then louder. Now he's barking, and I'm panicking trying to get the door open. I must mention that I'm 6'5" and well-built, play sports, etc., but even ramming my full weight into the door won't open it, and I'm really panicking now as my dog's barks turn into whines, then whimpering, then silence, and with all my might I slam into the door and it flies open. The light is off inside now, and it's pitch black. It won't turn back on, and I'm in complete darkness. Can't see my dog anywhere, and I stumble around trying to find a torch. Finally, I find it, and pick it up, and turn on my torch, and I wasn't prepared for what I'd see next. My dog had literally squashed itself into the furthest, darkest corner of the room, eyes closed and shaking violently. I immediately moved towards him, and as soon as I got within reach of him, he leapt at me into my arms and wouldn't move. I picked him up and swear I've never ran so fast in my goddamn life. I never stepped foot in that shed ever again, and my dog wouldn't even go near that part of the property. I don't know what happened in that shed that night, but I'll never forget it. Have a few, but this one stands out. I was catching a SkyTrain in one particular city about 15 minutes from where I get off. While I wait, there's a woman with glazed eyes asking people for money. She came up to me, stopped briefly, and asked, "Excuse me, could you spare some money? My brother is in the hospital and I'd like some money to buy him some flowers." That's rich, I thought. Drug addicts are getting more and more obvious with their lines. Here's $5. Gave it to her without even looking her in the face, convinced of her intentions. Anyways, my train pulls up and I get on. I look through the glass at her, walking around asking others for money as the train pulls away. The train arrives at the station 15 minutes later, and I walk down and out to the bus stop. There's only one bus the direction I'm going, and just my luck, it is there waiting when I get off the train. So on the bus, I hop and wait for the bus driver to finish reading his paper before the doors close and we embark down the highway. About 5 to 10 minutes traveling, the driver pulls over for a routine stop. The doors open, and to my complete astonishment, the woman from the SkyTrain walks into the bus, a dozen roses in hand. She looks me right in the eyes as she walks past to take her seat. How in the blue heck did she get there? I took the train before her. I watched her at the train stop from inside as we pulled away. I went over a river. I caught the first and only bus going this particular direction, and not only did she beat me there, she had time to go to a store and buy a dozen roses. To this day, I have no idea how this happened. A little backstory. I was a total idealist back in high school, so when choosing a college, I chose to go somewhere that none of my friends were attending, so that I could strike out on my own in a finding myself sort of way. Well, I ended up making a few really close friends my first semester. I mean, these guys became like a family to me in a matter of months. One day during winter break, one of those guys, my buddy Kimbo, had gone back home to visit friends and family, and on his return trip to our college, he hit a bad patch of ice and got into a car accident and was killed. It hurt like a son of a gun for a long time, and I still think about him all the time. But anyways, a few weeks after Kimbo's accident, me and the rest of the guys were getting back from a party off campus, and as we were standing outside our dorm building smoking a cig, I felt my phone vibrating, and when I pulled it out, I saw that I was getting a call from Kimbo's phone. Dumbfounded, I showed my friends the phone quickly and then answered. When I picked up, it just went directly to his voicemail, which played the same message it always had. It never happened again, and we never really talked about it, but for me, it was one of those someone's looking after me moments. I hadn't been doing very well after his death, but seeing his name show up on my cell phone screen one final time made me feel a whole lot better for a time, and really helped me get out of the slump I was in. I have no idea how his phone could have possibly called me, and I doubt I ever will, but this was one glitch in the Matrix that I'll forever be thankful for. Rest in peace, Kim. But feel free to call again. When I was like 10 or 11, I was going to the beach with my aunt and her friends. There were 2 cars of us. To get there, we had to go through a very large industrial area. We didn't know the direction, so our car was following the other. Suddenly, they did an unexpected turn, and so our driver had to take a sharp bend. In that moment, we heard a very clear, loud voice inside the car saying, laughing, "Sharp bend, The driver immediately hit the brakes. We looked at each other, puzzled. We all recognized it as a voice not belonging to any of us. In the very same time, we noticed that the other car stopped as well. The other driver got out of the car with a scared face and shouted to us, Did you hear that as well?" They heard the very same thing inside their car. The area around was fully deserted. Edit. Wow, thanks for the interest. A little bit of background. This happened in central Italy in the early 90s. My aunt used to act all the time, and most of the other guys were theater actors. The voice scared the crap out of us because it was very clear, near but not coming from a direction within the car you could distinguish, nor front nor rear. Inside the car, but from no distinct place. It was like mocking us. We were scared, but soon someone started to say, "Hey, which one of you did that?" Remember, these were comedy actors who used to do any sort of strange voice. This was till we noticed the other car stopping and saw the look of the guy driving that car. They were all as scared as us and told us we heard this scary voice inside our car and told the very same words we just heard. We were there on a hot day under the sun in an area with large streets and absolutely nothing and no one around us. No cars, no people, no buildings. We never figured out what happened. One night, I had a dream about being in a car with my sister at the church we went to. For some reason, it started going out of control, so I jumped to the wheel and tried to keep us from dying. Later, I told my sister about the dream, and she had the exact same dream, but instead, she was the one at the wheel and not me. About a year ago, I had a terrible nightmare. It started off me waking up in bed during a thunderstorm. As the room illuminated again and again from the flashes of lightning outside, I realized that the bed I was laying in wasn't mine. The head of the bed was against the wall the door was located on, and from my perspective, I couldn't tell if it was open or closed. That is, until I saw the face. At first, just the nose and jaw broke past the doorframe, but then an entire face slowly passed through the doorway. I tried to yell, "Who the heck are you? Where the heck am I?" But it felt like I had lost my voice. No matter how hard I tried to scream, nothing came out and this person continued to enter the room, looking dead ahead away from me. Then, just as the person was completely into the room, their head snapped towards me and it locked eyes with mine. I tried to get out of the bed, but felt completely paralyzed. The person started making their way to me, but with every step their body contorted in ways that would break a normal person's bones. Their necks snapped so the back of their head touched their back. Their jaw laid flat on their chest. Their arms had broken at the shoulders and migrated to their back like wings. Just terrifying things. and just before they reached me, I woke up. The next day I told my mom about it and went into a great deal about the room. Turns out it was almost an exact copy of my room when I was a baby. We moved out of that house when I was super young, like I have no idea what the insides to any room look like. Just kinda weird, I guess. Edit. So I guess I have sleep paralysis. Cool. As I'm typing this, I already feel deja vu. I've always wanted to share this part of my life with someone, but have never been able to. So I'll just tell a bunch of people on the internet. One day I was walking to work and all of a sudden had an urge to walk a different path than usual. I work downtown in a big city. It was a strange spur-of-the-moment urge to walk a different way that changed my life forever. I turned into an alley I had never seen before. As I remember it, I made it about 15 feet or so when an actual glitch happened. Everything in my mind scrambled. I felt like I didn't have a body anymore, just that I was a semi-conscious entity floating through some weird dimension. All of a sudden, in the array of different colors and shapes, a vision came to me. It was a bunch of strange-looking people that in my mind resembled businessmen in suits. They looked startled and panicked that I could see them. One of the people made a quick movement and everything turned to black. When I regained normality, I was on a completely different street. It was the same street that I always used to walk to work. I felt sick and severely disturbed/depressed. I've never done any hard drugs, never experienced any hallucinations, never have had anything like this happen to me. The weird thing is, when the glitch was correcting itself and I could see those people watching me like a caged animal, I had the feeling that I knew I was being controlled. It still bothers me very much to this day. TLDR, had a moment of spontaneity, caused a real-life glitch, life has seemed different ever since. During a spinal tap procedure, I was put under. While under the anesthetics, I had what I can only explain as an out-of-body experience, seeing as how my viewpoint was from above my body, looking down on the procedure. I watched the whole thing and saw that the doctor knocked my Game Boy off the tabletop while walking by, batteries ejecting from the fall. One fell in sight and he picked it up, but the other was next to the front left wheel under the bed out of his view. But not mine. I woke up groggy and told him where my other battery was, and he was shocked when he found it there. To this day, it still weirds me out. When I was a teenager, I had two really intense dreams one night. The first one was about an online friend of mine calling me to say she'd broken up with a boyfriend, and I sang a few lines of Seal's Don't Cry to her over the phone. The second dream was finding a real-life friend's dead body floating in her bathtub. I didn't think anything of it up until I logged on that evening, and the online friend came online to tell me her boyfriend broke up with her. I immediately asked if I could call her, and she said no. I remember thinking that it meant something, like I could change it. Not long after, my phone rang, and it was the real-life friend from the dream calling me. I was completely freaked out at this point, but talked to her normally. She was just talking about school and things. Up until I realized I heard a splash in the background. I asked her, "Are you in the tub?" And when she said yes, I felt like my heart had stopped. I asked her, "What did you do?" She didn't answer me right away, and then after a very long pause, she told me she'd taken an entire bottle of pills and chased it with mushrooms and vodka. She'd gotten scared waiting for it to hit her, so she called me so she could hear someone's voice. I hung up and called 911. By the time they got there, she was unconscious but alive. Today, she's a mom to a beautiful little girl, and she's okay. About a year ago, my girlfriend and I went to eat dinner at Chipotle's. It's in a smallish shopping area with the burger joint and payway neighboring the Chipotle, one of those kind of upper-classy type shopping areas. We pulled into the parking lot in front of the establishments at around 5 p.m. on a Friday evening to find an empty parking lot. There were no tables outside, there were no cars in the parking spots, not a person in sight, and even the lights inside the buildings were off. Completely confused, I took the car in a sort of loop around the building in order to leave. The only thing of interest was a single fire truck parked alongside the building, headlights on but no emergency lights, and no one in the truck. It struck us a little odd. Maybe a fire in the building? As we pull around the backside of the building and then finish looping around, we drive past the front facade of the building. Except this time, every parking spot is full, tables are outside with patrons at them, food half eaten. There's people walking around, and the lights inside the buildings are all on. But the fire truck was gone. Mind you, it took less than 30 seconds to make a circle around the building. Easily one of the strangest things I've ever experienced. More Adjustment Bureau than Matrix glitchy. I've posted this before elsewhere, but here goes. Sorry, this is a long read. I'm from Finland, and that's also where these things I'm about to describe to you happened. This was some years ago, pre-smartphone GPS era. It was the end of the summer, and myself and two friends were on a camping trip way up in the north in Lapland. The mosquito season was over, and the weather was cooling down in anticipation of the coming fall. The three of us had packed food and gear for a 10-day trek. The car we arrived in had been left at the parking lot of a visitor center. This happened within the premises of the Urho-Kekkonen National Park, a 985 square mile stretch of wilderness near the Russian border. The terrain there varies greatly, from treeless and semi-mountainous to dense forest of spruce and pine and dwarf birch. There are lots of swamps. Seeing reindeer is not uncommon, and some nights you might hear wolves in the distance. You could run into a bear or a wolverine in this place, but of course normally they avoid people. We mostly camped in a tent, but some nights we used shelters and simple huts provided for travelers free of charge. The trip had lasted 5 days. We were at the furthest of any kind of civilization when we were going to be on that particular outing, truly in the middle of nowhere. There really is nothing there. There are no villages, towns, or industry. The place is a national park after all. Seeing other hikers happen from time to time. You'd see some people in the distance maybe. Very rarely would you come face to face with anyone. So, in the middle of our trip, we were camped in a small clearing, woodland extending around us for a considerable distance in all directions. It was already dark, we had eaten our evening meal, and all 3 of us were jammed in our only tent. It was a bit cramped, but we fit. We took turns carrying it during the hikes. We were just exchanging some jokes and crude humor in the dark, like guys in their 20s do, about to go to sleep in our sleeping bags. When we quieted down, we began to hear it, talking, and the sound of machinery. Given our location, this was profoundly weird. We camped in a tent because there were no huts nearby. Maybe there was another camp somewhere near us? We couldn't quite make out what was being said, but it was a human voice, no doubt about it. But nothing really could explain the sound of heavy machinery. It sounded like an excavator or a tank, something big, powerful, and really not too far away. Combined with the sound of talking, we thought construction yard. But at that time of night, in an unpopulated protected nature reserve, we got out of our tent. It was cold and pitch black. The campfire had some coals still glowing. We took out our flashlights. My 2 buddies have always been a lot braver than me. The sound was clearly coming from the north, maybe half a kilometer away. We thought the construction might be going on behind a small hill some distance away. We could see no lights or anything. We still could not make out what was being said. The speaking-like voice was monotonous, and it was impossible even to say what language was being used. Still sounded a lot like a person speaking, though. You may be aware of the sort of spooky phenomenon of hearing a human voice in static. Maybe you've used a blow dryer and been sure someone is talking. Turn it off and it was just something the brain tried to interpret from the steady hum. Maybe it was sort of like that. It's hard to explain. The machinery-like sound continued, not loud, but you could sort of make out the powerful engine, at times accelerating or adding power, at times at idle. My 2 friends resolved to go find out what was going on. We put our warm clothes back on, donned boots, and I sat next to the dying fire, adding some more wood to it. I would stay at camp while my buddies left to check out this mystery construction yard in the middle of nowhere in the Lapland woods. So there I sat. The guys took out their maps, took a compass heading out, and left. I could hear them make their way through the forest and see the light fading from their flashlights. Then they were gone. The weird sounds continued, unaltered. They were gone 15 minutes, then maybe 30, then the better part of an hour. It was odd, judging by the volume of the sound. They should have reached it, checked it out, and been back already. I added more firewood and tried to make out what the person talking was saying, but it was too tinny and obscure. The guys had been away for over 2 hours. I figured they had stayed for coffee with the construction guys or something. Then, the sound stopped. Just like that. It just ended all at the same time. The engine sound and the voice both just quit. It was very silent. I waited for another 30 minutes, very worried now that something bad had happened, that maybe my friends were lost. Should I go and try to find them? I shouted their names several times and built the fire pretty big. I was scared out of my mind when suddenly I saw the flashlights of my friends. Apparently they were returning in a hurry. The guys got back to camp out of breath. They told me the following. They had followed the sound beyond the small ridge in the distance. There was nothing there, and it seemed like they were not getting any closer to the source of the sounds. They had to stop every now and again, be quiet, and listen to it to be able to walk towards it. They walked and stopped like this for some time, then realized they were not getting any closer. The sounds did not change in volume at all. They decided to go just a bit further several times, when suddenly the sound just stopped like someone pressed a button on a recording. They realized they had been going on for a long time. They were in the middle of the dark woods, alone. They reversed the heading and started back at a brisk pace. Eventually, they saw my huge fire from the top of a hill and found their way back. The weird thing is, we seemed to think the sound stopped at different times. They had been gone 2.5 hours in total. They said the sound stopped at around the 1 hour 15 minute mark after they left. Then they started to head back immediately, return trip taking a bit longer, even though they kept a good pace. They apparently wandered around for a bit. For me, the sound stopped at the 2 hour mark, just 30 minutes before they returned. We did not sleep that night. Nothing more on that trip happened, and we never found out what the weird construction yard-like sound was about. When we returned to the park's visitor center some 5 days later, we asked around, but no one knew of any ongoing construction taking place in the whole national park area. It's been bugging me ever since.